So I accepted Jesus when I was 4 years old, believe it or not. I grew up in a Christian home. My parents were both raised in Christian homes as well, and had a great example of a family, of a family unit, being involved in church in their Sundays, Wednesdays, even Saturdays. It was a very healthy thing. And almost to the point where, if y'all remember, that movie Pleasantville, like it just seemed perfect. It just seemed everything was perfect. Now, granted, there's four of us as kids. There's a big age gap between the older two and the younger two. So all of that, but really a very enjoyable childhood. Until I turned between 13 and 14. And I was attending a private Christian school at the time. And what felt like a dream, what felt like going to sleep one night and everything being perfect, to waking up the next day feeling like my whole world had turned upside down. And what happened over that year and the years to come was that my parents would go through a very ugly and difficult divorce, which was first a separation. It was hearing them scream and yell down the hall at each other when I don't even have a single memory of my parents ever fighting up until that point, to being on the brinks of losing our home because the power was shut off and my dad was kicked out of the house and there was adultery going on and things. As a child, you're trying to piece all together of what you're seeing and what you're being put in the middle of, and feeling so out of control, feeling so lost and so desperate to feel loved, because what you had originally experienced is what I identified as this was safe. The family unit was safe. The mom and dad was safe. And that's what I wanted. But I didn't get a choice to live with who I wanted to between mediation and other events that happened. It was best for me to live with my mom at the time, which we moved into my parents' home, or my grandparents' home, while I was attending high school. And my dad had to live elsewhere. And to this day, 34 years old, I'm still a daddy's girl. But that period of when I needed a father, when I was starting to be interested in relationships, and even in junior high, I shouldn't even have been dating in junior high, but boyfriends and guys, and looking for them for that love and acceptance, because the father figure that I had and that I wanted was not there, wasn't available as often as really I wanted him to be, and not always by his choice. And at the time, my mom was also going through her own struggles of mental health that really was just surfacing from the 25 years of their relationship, and the instability in her own life. So I didn't have that example either of her trying to date and be involved in relationships, and I really just didn't want to. I really had a lot of resentment towards it. But after working my second job at McDonald's for 2.5 years, whatever boldness was in me that day, some Spanish boldness in me, decided that I was going to give this cute boy who drove through the drive-thru my phone number and think that maybe he would call me. I don't even know. Maybe it could have been a dare at this point. I don't even remember. But that turned into a relationship, and I was 16 at the time, and he was 20. And what started as, innocent puppy love and, relationship, and my mom was there and approved at the time, even though he was older than me, turned into years of a soul tie to this individual. We became involved physically, and was hiding it from my mom, was hiding it from his parents, who obviously both did not approve. But I felt like this was my person. This was who I was going to marry. I had given myself to him emotionally, physically, in all aspects, and was even dreaming of a life with him down the road. He was an incredible musician, was in a band, but that road started to lead towards being involved in environments that were not safe, drugs, other sexual activity going on. I was the groupie that was along with the other girlfriends. But it was just very toxic. It was a very toxic situation. It was an unsafe situation for really anybody, any young girl especially. But I felt like this was my person. I had to make it work. My parents didn't make it work. And I wasn't going to let that happen. This is the person I chose. So I thought that was it, right? But through those years, he would break up with me, and we would get back together, and break up and get back together. And I always felt like it was my fault. Like I felt like there was something wrong with me, or I did something, and I need to go back and make it right. And except he was the one who was cheating on me. He was the one that was doing the drugs. He had his own stuff, and I'm sure I wasn't perfect through it all, but I felt the weight and responsibility of that relationship and the success or failure of it. So when I was 19, I came home, and there had already been situations going on where there was cheating and things like that. And I came home, and his phone was blowing up next to his bed, or next to our bed. We had moved in with each other at this point. I was 19. My mom had moved out. And I just remember the phone going off over and over again and feeling this, go look at it, go look at it. And he was passed out. And I go over and I look at it, and it was a text from our next door neighbor who he had just been involved with. And something snapped in me that day. I call it was the Holy Spirit saying, get out, get out, get out, 3 times. And I had made the decision that day. I was like, I didn't care what it cost me at that point. I was leaving. I was tired of feeling that way. I was tired of feeling worthless. I was tired of feeling abused in this mental way of being pulled back into this relationship that was just so toxic for me. And I flip on the lights, and I'm packing my things. I don't even know where I'm going at this point. I just know that I'm leaving. And he tries to get me to stay. He tries to get me, to calm down, and I'm sorry. And then, it wasn't my fault. All the excuses that I've heard for over those years. But with that confirmation of the Holy Spirit, I knew that if I continued to live this life, if I continued to stay in this relationship, it was only death for me. So through a series of events over the next week, I had picked up, and I had never been anywhere else in California, or anywhere outside of California, rather than visiting for a longer period of time. But my sister lived here. And I had texted her, had called her, and she was like, I'm coming up and getting you. She made 16, 18-hour drive, whatever it is, between here and Sacramento. And when she did, there was still that hesitation in me. I was like, am I making the right choice? Can't I make it work one more time? Is there something different I can do? He's going to change. He said he would change. The Holy Spirit just said, get out, get out, get out. So I did, and I had moved down here and started a new job. My sister had got me an interview with actually the employer I'm still with. But a couple months down here, it comes around again. I'm sorry. I love you. Please take me back. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll leave my family. I'll move down there. Like everything I wanted him to ever say. And I bought into it again. And we met, and he decided to make the move. I'm leaving my family. I'm driving down here. He did. I had found out that I was pregnant. And by the grace of God, I was actually pregnant before I even left California. And didn't even find out until insurance kicked in and things like that, to find on the ultrasound that, hey, you're not 15, 16 weeks pregnant. You're 25, and by the way, it's a boy. Floods of emotion, floods of fear, and what do I do? And now he's not going to have a dad and all of this. So again, I tried to make it work. I didn't expect as much from him at that point, but he moved down. We moved in together. We tried to make this thing work. But the Holy Spirit had already begun to do something different in me, because it wasn't just about me. There was this other life. He didn't have a choice in this. But God had a plan for him too. And by listening, though I was stumbling along the way, fighting my own will and fighting my own fears, in the middle of the night, his dad ended up leaving us, moving back to California, and we never heard from him again. Again, you could have done something different. You pushed him away. You pushed too hard. But at that point, I knew that I was responsible for this little child. And I wasn't going to let him hurt him the way that I felt like I was hurt. And unfortunately, 3 years after he left, he passed away from an illness that had already been going on, of seizures in his life. And you talk about remembering and envisioning, confronting, that person. All I could think about on that day when I got a call that they were taking him off life support was, my son won't have a dad. He'll never be able to ask those questions. He'll never be able to ask why. But that 3-year gap that he had left, I had my own layers of things that I needed to release and let go of. Physical, spiritual, emotional. I was sitting on the living room floor in our 1-bedroom apartment, had no couch. It's just me and God and the beanbag. And I was reading the book, Kiss the Girls and Make Them Cry by Lisa Bevere. And the book, it's about sexual purity, and it starts out by all the reasons why we should, and it's healthy, and it's God's desire for us. And I was like, all right, get through this. I already know. I screwed that up multiple times. But when it got to the place of name your partners by name and forgive them and release it to God, I struggled with that, and I threw the book across the room because there were people I couldn't remember their names. Because I had fallen back into that life of parties and drinking and sexual activity while I was here, because it was so broken, ultimately stemming down to, I just wanted the family unit. I just wanted mom and dad. I just wanted that relationship, to be loved, to be accepted. And none of them fulfilled, right? None of it. In the moment it did, but each partner I was ever with never did. And it wasn't until I released those things and the names and the moments and the memories and all of it, and just let God's love flood me. Because it wasn't about what I did or if I was good enough or if I could have changed things. It was just like, God, I'm sorry. I tried to find that love outside of you. I'm sorry that I gave myself away. And now you're coming together and picking up all the pieces and putting me back together. I still had the lies of feeling like I wasn't good enough. I didn't deserve, right? And working through those emotions and feeling like, okay, God, that you've forgiven me. You've set me free now from that shame and from these soul ties, God. But I don't deserve anything else. But he had other plans. In 2013, I met my now husband. And we would date for 8 months and get engaged for 8 months. And work through these emotions of, you feel like you don't deserve Charal, but I have a blessing for you. And And that blessing was in finding my husband who just loves me the way that I am, imperfections and all. And then the Lord gave us 2 more kids to add to that. So, yes, the temptation comes up where the enemy wants to put me back in that mindset of, look what you did, look who you were with, you're not good enough. If they only knew how dirty you are. But God says you're clean. God says you're forgiven. God says, I don't care what you did because I took it. You took it on the cross. So He just wants you to know that you're loved today.